The impact has been very great so far. I think if we look at it in broad terms, if you look at electricity, for example, Ukraine has been deprived of about 30% of its electricity production. But interestingly, demand for electricity has fallen by a sort of similar margin at the same time. So at the moment, things are still in balance, relatively speaking. In the early phase of the war, Russia went after Ukraine's refining capacity, oil refining capacity. It targeted the biggest functioning refinery in Kremenchuk, and it also went after oil storage facilities. And of course, this was an effort to try to stop fuel supplies going to the Ukrainian army. Ukraine is going to struggle this winter. If you look at gas, for example, gas production, in fact, domestic production has been relatively stable, which is remarkable given that we've had a full-scale war underway. They've managed to source sufficient volumes of gas from abroad to probably get through the worst of the winter, but much will depend on the weather itself. And there is some, I think, real anxiety about the nuclear plant in Zaporizhia, which supplies supplied almost half of Ukraine's nuclear power production, which from memory was probably well over 35% overall nuclear of what went into the grid. And the fact that the nuclear facility has been regularly disabled of late and cut off the Ukrainian grid means that Ukraine might have to burn more gas in order to supply electricity. So if that were to happen and the winter were to be particularly cold, then Ukraine would very probably run short of gas. So households have been warned in those cases where thermostats can be controlled that the heating temperature within apartments, for example, may well be regulated at around 16 degrees, so much lower than normal. And people have been encouraged as far as possible to try to insulate their homes, again where possible, to burn wood and use other fuel sources. So there is, I think, real anxiety that this could be a very, very harsh winter. And September, for example, was quite a cold month in Ukraine, and they used slightly more gas than anticipated. But Naftogaz, the national oil and gas company, says that it has currently in storage the volumes that it would normally expect to have for winter. But of course, the problem is that these are not normal circumstances. So there could be some serious problems ahead. Well, these are big questions, and of course very much depends on the outcome of the war and the extent to which Ukraine's critical infrastructure is further damaged. But I think what is going to be really interesting to observe is how Ukraine rebuilds, because a lot of the previous energy consumption came from industrial plants in the southeast of the country, particularly the metallurgical sector, for example, heavy users of gas, coal. And if those industries are not rebuilt, then Ukraine's energy consumption is going to fall further. If you think back to the early 90s, then Ukraine was probably one of the biggest consumers of gas in Europe, consuming 110 billion cubic meters of gas. And this was a reflection just of the size of the industry at the time. And meanwhile, it's probably last year, before the war, it was using something like a third of that. So I think we're going to see that trend further continue. In terms of the future of the transit of gas, again, an open question, because much will depend on Russia's future relations with Europe and whether these in some cases can be repaired. If, for example, there is a change of leadership in Russia, if Russia revises its foreign security and defense policy, then I would expect to see some European countries once again buying Russian gas, not in the same volumes, but strikingly we have now the Nord Stream pipelines out of commission because of what appears to have been an act of sabotage. There is transit through Turkey across the Black Sea, from Turkey into Europe, into Southeast Europe. And there is the Ukrainian pipeline system, which is being at the moment almost completely, lies completely unused. And there is a pipeline coming through Poland via Belarus. So if Russia wanted to export gas and European countries wanted to receive it, then there would be opportunities undoubtedly to use this extremely well-developed system in Ukraine. But the outlook in terms of Ukraine's relations with Russia would indicate to me that it's not going to be buying gas from Russia for a very long time, if ever again.